We are seeing a systemic attack on children from every pillar of culture: academia, the entertainment industry, the gender ideology, all attacking our children at one time. My name is Landon Starbuck, and this is my story. I'm a mother, an advocate, and the founder of a nonprofit combating child exploitation in America called Freedom Forever. I was born in Dallas, Texas, and I was the only child. My parents divorced when I was 5, and, going back and forth, any child that is in a broken situation like that, that's difficult. My first memory was when I was 5 and my dad left, and I didn't understand what was happening. My parents didn't really know how to emotionally connect. There's that saying that when you know better, you do better. They just didn't know. I think they had their own unresolved, childhood traumas or just the way things were when they were growing up, but there was nobody to help process what was happening. My mom was a beautiful model, very successful model. So I think there was a lot of unrealistic beauty standards that were put on me as a very young girl. So I started out modeling at a very young age, and I hated it. That is when the bullying started at school. And I remember there was a kid who took a balloon and had pushed it up my skirt, and all the kids were laughing. And when I told a teacher what had happened, they laughed it off and no consequences, nothing happened from that. So it was just a lot of little things that happened. It was a constant state of just a miserable experience at school, to the point where I think I was 12 years old, I was suicidal. And I was put on psychotropic medication that only made it worse. And that brings me to when I was 16, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. I had to have an emergency surgery to remove a very large tumor. And I went back to school, and I'd been gone. Everybody knew what had happened. And I was called the cancer girl behind my back. It was just really hard. It was hard to have to ask for help with my books because I couldn't carry over a certain weight, missing out on all those, traditions and dances and prom and all of that because of my health struggles. So I think that made me really resilient. Ultimately, I think I was 21. That's when I was cancer-free. So there's a sense of urgency or passion or fire in me that maybe otherwise wouldn't have been there if I hadn't have experienced cancer at such a young age. I think that I've always loved music, and it was an outlet for me to process emotional trauma, whether it was on, a barrel of hay at a festival or at the mall outside Dillard's. I just would perform wherever I could to just get the experience. And then when I turned 18, I packed my car up and I moved to LA for the Hollywood dream. So when I first moved to Hollywood, I got a record deal. And there was a celebration, signing party or dinner. And I remember standing up at the end of the table, being asked to say a few words. And I stood up and said, I grew up watching so many pop stars who I loved their music, but they would take off their clothes. And I want to be the first role model for girls that doesn't have to use sexuality and take off their clothes, but I want to be a real artist that can do that without doing those things. And I was so excited, so naive. And then the next day, that deal was canceled. My manager fired me, my agent dropped me, everything unraveled from there. And that was my first real experience of the Hollywood dream. A new manager picked me up. One of the things he asked me to do was to star in a music video of a big boy band that he also managed. And he said, hey, if you go and do this music video where you star as the love interest, you get to go on tour with them. And I showed up, and I went to the wardrobe room, and they had lingerie hanging on the rack. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable wearing that. And they said, that's okay, we'll find somebody who will. Lost that shoot, and then lost my tour. That's when I really started understanding this sexual quid pro quo system that happens in Hollywood, which I don't think is a secret across America. And then you would see girls, do certain things, engage in certain behaviors, go to the parties, hang out with the older men, and they would suddenly get these massive tours. They would suddenly get these massive magazine covers. I just wasn't comfortable moving forward with that as the status quo. I could just make money writing for other artists. And so I would write for a lot of up-and-coming Disney and Nickelodeon stars, and that was way worse because I was forced to sign NDAs to not disclose certain things that I saw and experienced. And that's really when I started recognizing the exploitation industry as a whole. I have 3 kids, and they are my whole world. and they offer me fulfillment that no Grammy, no paycheck could ever give me. I remember when I was looking at my daughter and thinking about the messages that she would be sent, the pornified culture she would eventually be exposed to. And I started thinking about the kids that I wrote for or that I worked with in Hollywood. I wanted to draw awareness to that problem, but the more I learned, the more I studied, the more I served on boards and worked with organizations combating trafficking, the more I realized this is not just the entertainment industry. This is not just, people at the top, the elite. This is literally happening every day across America. But I realized there's a root cause here. And there is an abundant supply of vulnerable children that are being targeted and exploited. Rescuing kids is not the answer. It doesn't solve the problem. It's necessary, but we have to get to these kids before they ever need to be rescued. And that's really when I felt, compelled to start Freedom Forever, a nonprofit combating child exploitation in America. I was talking about the grooming, the pedophilic content, and what are we seeing now? We are seeing a systemic attack on children from every pillar of culture. Academia, the entertainment industry, the gender ideology that is facilitating the groundwork for pedophilia to become normalized and for an increase of sexual exploitation in children to become normalized. Parents have to decide if they want to be outraged by what's happening or if they want to actively participate in stopping it from happening. And when you get to a point where you can't remove the porn because it becomes a game of whack-a-mole and you get one book removed and another one pops up and then something else happens, ultimately there has to be, an internal conversation saying, can my child thrive in this environment that I am putting them into? Nobody's forcing me to put my children in this situation. And that's my fault. That's my responsibility. So I can't be surprised if I send, her to this environment 8 hours a day and she comes home fully indoctrinated or hating herself because there's a conflict with the values that we're raising her with and her experiences every day at school. Just to have friends, just to get good grades, you have to become someone else. You have to deny truth. You have to capitulate on the pronouns. And the moment we make concessions and start negotiating with lies, we've lost. As a mom, I think first and foremost, I have to walk the walk of what I, encourage parents to do every day. So it starts with us as individuals. It starts with me in my home. And part of the model that I've built along with the incredible people in my organization is that we have to protect our homes from the inside out and not depend on politicians, on schools, systems, or any of that to raise our children for us or to protect them. The only way we win the war on children is by becoming warriors for our children. And that requires us to stop being concerned with what people think by actually walking the values that we say we have. I mean, what is the point of having our values and morals if we cannot embody them and model them to our children? Our children don't care what we say, they care what we do. They watch what we do and they emulate it like children do with everything else. And what they're exposed to has a direct effect on them. When they see us experience risk or even sacrifice to stand up for what we believe in, that is the greatest lesson we could teach our kids. Thank you for watching this video. To keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation.